Hey everyone, I've got a quick one for you guys. I was just scrolling through reading the news, and I found an article that I thought was quite interesting. So I wanted to go ahead and, uh, in the wise words of my elders, put this one on the record. It's one of those pieces that really make you think about what you've been told this whole time. And maybe some of you already knew um, this, and maybe some of you don't, but it's definitely something to consider. The name of the article is 50 Years of Tax Cuts for the Rich Failed to Trickle Down, Economics Study Says. This is written by Amy Peachy. This is a article from CBS News. I will go ahead and read this in here. Tax cuts for the wealthy have long drawn support from conservative lawmakers and economists who argue that such measures will trickle down and eventually boost jobs and income for everyone else. But a new study from a London School of Economics says 50 years of such tax cuts have only helped one group, the rich. The new paper by David Hope of the London School of Economics and Julian Lindbergh of King's College London examined 18 developed countries from Australia to the United States over a 50-year period from 1965 to 2015. The study compared countries that passed tax cuts in the specific year, such as the U.S. in 1982 when President Ronald Reagan slashed taxes on the wealthy, and with those that didn't, and then examined their economic outcomes. Per capita gross domestic product and unemployment rates were nearly identical after 5 years in countries that slashed taxes on the rich and in those that didn't, the study found. But the analysis discovered one major change. The income of the rich grew much faster in countries where tax rates were lowered. Instead of trickling down to the middle class, tax cuts for the rich may not accomplish much more than help the rich keep more of their riches and exacerbate income inequality, the research indicates. This is an excerpt. Based on our research, London. Based on our research, we would argue that the economic rationale for keeping taxes on the rich low is weak. Julian Lindbergh, a co-author of the study and lecturer in public policy at King's College London, said in an email to CBS Money Watch, in fact, if we look back into history, the period with the highest taxes on the rich, the post-war period, was also a period with high economic growth and low unemployment. And then there's a Twitter post here. In our piece for at Conservation UK, David Hope and I argue that the government should not give undue consent to economic consequences of taxing the rich when deciding how to pay for COVID-19. And then there's a picture that says, vote yes on Prop 15, tax the rich to fund schools and services. Continuing into the article, because the analysis ends in 2015, the research doesn't include Donald Trump's massive tax overhaul, which he signed into law in late 2017. And which slashed taxes for the rich and corporations while providing a moderate cut, for the middle class. But Lindbergh, who co-authored the study with David Hope, a visiting fellow at the London School of Economics International Inequalities Institute, said that he wouldn't expect the results of the tax cut to be much different. Already, Mr. Trump's tax cuts have lifted the fortunes of the ultra-rich, according to 2019 research from two prominent economists, Emmanuel Saez and Gabriel Zuckerman of the University of California at Berkeley. For the first time in a century, the 400 richest American families paid lower taxes in 2018 than people in the middle class, the economists found. The careful new research from the London School of Economics suggests indeed the tax increases on the wealthy should be considered post-COVID, Berkeley Zuckerman said in an email to CBS Money Watch. The next section here is engine for stronger economic growth. To be sure, the economy was humming along before the pandemic struck the nation in March, with the unemployment rate that was lowest in about half of the century. Conservative think tanks such as American Enterprise Institute pointing to Mr. Trump's tax cuts as the engine for stronger economic growth. Yet, even so, millions of American families struggle to find jobs that pay living wages, while the cost of essentials such as healthcare, housing, and education increased at a far faster rate than the typical income. Even before the pandemic, income inequality had reached its highest point in 50 years, according to the census data. In 2020, the pandemic was worsened in inequities across all spectrums, touching racial, gender, and educational divides. When the economy shut down in March, workers who couldn't transition to remote work, typically lower paid employees involved in retail, service, and hospitality, were hit the hardest. At the same time, white-collar workers generally fared better as they were more likely to maintain their jobs, and as they shifted to remote work, investors also benefited as the stock market rallied on hopes for economic recovery. A development that doesn't help most low and middle class workers. Only about half the U.S. population is invested in the stock market through their retirement and savings accounts, and even more than 80% of all stocks are owned by the richest 10%. Interesting. Then there is a Americans for Tax Fairness breaking. U.S. billionaires have grown their collective wealth by $1 trillion since mid-March. That's more than it will cost to send $3,000 stimulus check to every person in America. More of our latest research. Wow. Maybe I will go ahead and I'll post this image during the video. That way you guys can see this while I'm talking. Since the pandemic began, the combined wealth of America's 651 billionaires has jumped by more than $1 trillion, reaching $4 trillion in early December. Americans for Tax Fairness said earlier this month. Meanwhile, almost 8 million Americans have fallen into poverty since the start of the pandemic through November, according to new data released by the University of Chicago and University of Notre Dame. Rebuilding the economy and household wealth for low and middle class families are among the issues facing President-elect Joe Biden after he's inaugurated next month. Raising taxes on the rich and corporations could provide trillions of dollars in resources for helping the economic recovery. This is not only a viable option, but also a fair option, because some of the wealthiest taxpayers have benefited from the pandemic. For instance, large corporations such as Amazon and their shareholders. He noted these taxpayers could reasonably be asked to pay more to make up for pandemic losses. Okay, and that is the article. Now, I found that to be interesting. We have the data that would suggest that trickle-down economics does not work in not just the United States, but across the globe, at least in the, let's see here, at least in the, how many countries did they look at? 18 developed countries from Australia to United States. So, yeah, and that's something we've kind of known for a long time. But, obviously, if you're a conservative, conservative Republican, or just conservative in general, your ideology would dictate that if you take care of the big guys, they'll take care of everyone else. But basically, we're just seeing one of the greatest wealth transfers in history. And people have been saying that, but they haven't really been able to see it. But this study does portray that that's the truth. So I guess this article is definitely pro, let's tax the rich more, the wealthy more, because they've made massive gains. There's definitely been a massive wealth redistribution to their coffers, and they can do more, especially in a pandemic. So something to look at. Let me see here. I'm going to go ahead and post this information. I'll post a link in the description for you. And this was just a quick one. But let me know what you think. Do you think we should tax the wealthy more? Do you think you think we should get rid of the whole idea of trickle-down economics? Do you think we need to infuse the middle class and see how that goes. Maybe these relief bills. I mean, what would a $1 trillion relief bill being pushed to the middle and lower class do for the country? Maybe we should try that. You know, just something to think about. But as I always, keep it real. This has been Real Talk, Real People, and we're out.